Hello, this is George from George's Music Blog, and today I am talking about three iconic Aphex Twin EPs from the early 90s, and they are Digeridoo, Xylem Tube, and On. This video is part of my series through the Aphex discography, inspired in part by my decision a couple of years ago to attempt to listen to the entire back catalogue in chronological order. I was a massive Aphex fan already, so I was familiar with the majority of his music, though I did pick up many new nuggets along the way. And it was a way of getting a slightly different perspective on his music, and in particular, his development as an artist. What was especially striking was how much his music evolved over just a few years, even from 1991 to 95. And if you look at the decade of the 90s as a whole, then he covered an insane amount of ground. And the music coming out at the end of the decade, Window Liquor and then subsequently Drugs, of course, was just completely unrecognisable from the early analog bubble bath EPs. But the same is true of the 1990s in general, and technology plays a large part in that change with the explosion of digital technology and music being made entirely on computers in the latter half of the decade. A decade doesn't seem to make much difference nowadays, which I'm sure is partly just down to me getting old. I did wonder if that was going to change with AI, but at the moment that largely seems to be responsible for making music even less interesting. Anyway, that's enough grumbling, so let's get into the first release I'm going to talk about, and that is the Digeridoo EP, Richard's first outing on the legendary Belgian label R&S. Now obviously this is home to one of Aphex Twin's most notorious early tunes. I covered this a little in my video on the Analog Bubble Bath series, as it actually appeared first on Analog Bubble Bath 2. Check out the video linked in the description below for the reason why. The track was apparently inspired by the New Age travellers who would turn up at raves in Cornwall, where the young Richard James was DJing and sit at the back of the dance floor playing the Aboriginal instrument in question. The sound of the riff itself, however, most likely originated from a Roland TB-303 rather than an actual sample of a didgeridoo. A lot of Aphex's very early material consisted of harsh industrial techno, but didgeridoo stands out for being particularly manic. This was supposedly driven by the desire to really just tire ravers out at the end of the night, with most clubs closing sometime between midnight and dawn. When the lights came down, the loved up crowd would still be raring to go. So James created a track so intense it would just properly finish everybody off at the end of the night. Despite the ragged corners of the lo-fi production, there's no denying the track is an absolute monster. The malevolent, wailing acid line sounds like a siren of pure evil, calling to awaken demons everywhere. The frenetic tempo is just around 150 BPM mark, pitching it sort of between hard techno and kind of proto breakbeat. Though given the full-on intensity, the track would just pretty much dominate any set it was mixed into. All the rest of the EP is on the harsh industrial side. Flaphead is a relentless industrial pounder, all metallic clangs and lurching cavernous bass squelching. Floem raises the manic stakes even higher with a rapid fire beat that kind of mimics the sound of the double kick drum pedal used in heavy metal. Coupled with the obnoxious detuned synths and clouds of distortion, the overall effect is fairly migraine inducing. The release is rounded out then by an extended version of Isopropylex, previously seen on Analog Bubble Bath 1, so no respite from the heaviness to be found here. Maybe it's a sign of how James's production and mastering skills grew exponentially in the early part of the 90s, as what stands out about these early releases is not just the intensity, but the kind of oppressive weight brought by that sort of murky lo-fi atmosphere. Compared to the extremities of speed and intensity that electronic music would reach just a few short years later, with jungle mutating into drum and bass, and then things like gabba and breakcore coming along, the menacing vibe here seems naively cartoonish now. But the Digeridoo EP was a minor landmark release of its time, beginning to put Aphex Twin on the map, and no one can deny it for sheer energy and grit. My appetite for harsh music has decreased with age, to be honest, so until the next time I find myself at an illegal rave on a disused brownfield site, I probably won't be listening to this collection of tracks too often these days. Xylem Tube. Now we come to one of Aphex's most well-loved tracks and probably the most artfully crafted of his discography up to this point. The kind of tune that could bring a hush to a crowded room or convert die-hard rock fans to electronic music. Yes, Polynomial-C. The haunting synth arpeggio is instantly recognizable as it wavers into view, backed by those big trancey pads and a breakbeat that sounds kind of shonky by today's standards, but suits the kind of old school loved up vibe of the track perfectly. Anyone coming to this off the back of the harsh industrial techno of the Digeridoo EP might be surprised to find something so unashamedly lush sounding. And while Analog Bubble Bath off the debut EP was definitely on the kind of chill side of things, Polynomial-C is an undeniable floor filler, hands in the air, a euphoric banger, but without resorting to cheesiness. The other 3 tracks on this EP do revert to the harder industrial seam that James was mining across his early releases. Flange Phase is a densely claustrophobic workout with a heavily, you guessed it, flanged breakbeat sample. Tamphex is notable for the sample lifted from an advert for a well-known feminine hygiene product. Immature? Yes. But also terrifying and hilarious at the same time? Yeah. There's nothing like racing towards a frenzied acid techno drop with the word Tampax being repeated over and over like a demonic mantra. Closing out proceedings is the brooding Dodecahedron, a track which surely emerged from the same sessions that birthed the I Care Because You Do album, which, despite coming out in 1995, does contain many tracks which are dated 1990 or 91. The broken beat sounds like it was beaten out on oil drums and a disused air hanger, while lurking in the background are horror movie soundtrack-esque strings and an ominous groaning noise like the wind rushing down the chimney on a dark night. The whole piece is eerie, chilling, magical, and an early sign that Aphex Twin's music was going to take a radical turn away from anything resembling dance music. On. Now, having listened through the back catalogue sequentially up to this point, it is striking how much of a step up the On EP feels like, as Aphex's music goes beyond the broad confines of something resembling dance music and into a realm that exists purely on its own terms. One could argue it was an attempt to appeal to a broader audience with its inviting piano melody and the gentle sound of rainfall in the background. But any suspicions that Aphex was going all Mike Oldfield are dispelled by the next track, 73 Yips, which sees him back in harsh industrial mode with its kind of slingshot kick drum and heavy metallic atmosphere. The other 2 cuts, Dscape and Zephyr, are largely mood-based pieces that point the way to the deep explorations of tone and texture on the upcoming Selected Ambient Works Volume 2. On was also accompanied by a remixes EP containing 4 reworks of the track. Among these is a version by Music, whose career was just getting started with his debut on Reflex that year, bringing his trademark distortion and maximal kind of more is more approach to the mix, as well as Reload, aka Tom Middleton and Mark Pritchard, which is probably my favourite version, adding breakbeats and reworking the melody to create an expansive and uplifting journey that also yet stays true to the original. The other 2 inclusions, listed as the Dscape mix and the 28 mix, are examples of James's penchant for supposed remixes that seem to have no resemblance to the original track. Is this just a way of challenging our perceptions as listeners around the potential contained within a track that we're just not seeing? Or is it just more mischief making on his part? Who really knows or cares ultimately? The Dscape mix is a frankly bizarre piece of music with a weirdly organic sense of rhythm that sounds like someone struggling to climb an endless flight of stairs. The 28 mix is another beatless excursion into tone, again with a distinctly ominous vibe that would have sounded at home on Saw 2. On's popularity is surely helped due to its suitability for home listening and chill out sessions, plus of course the charming stop motion video directed by none other than Jarvis Cocker, who directed quite a few of the early videos for Warp Records. The seeds of later, more experimental work are also sown here though, with a distinctive drum pattern defined by that heavy downbeat, which he would continually explore and experiment with over the coming years. So, final reflections. Okay, these 3 EPs released across 92 and 93 offer a mere snapshot into Richard James's music, as he moved away from the harsh industrial techno geared for raves and into an expanded sonic territory geared for more reflective listening during something of a golden age for electronic music. I'd love to have been old enough to hear these tracks fresh when they came out, to have been there the first time a DJ dropped Polynomial-C, for example, but instead I'll have to content myself with appreciating them from afar. I got into Aphex in the early noughties, so most of these tracks are massively nostalgic anyway for me now. But I would also love to hear your memories of these tunes, so please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, that is it from me. Please give the video a like if you're still watching at this point, and check out my channel for more of the same. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.